Originally, I had it at 100 miles altitude. And we did the reentry characteristics from 100 miles. We found that composite materials were marginal. So we lowered it from 100 miles to 100 kilometers, knowing full well most Americans wouldn't know the difference between 100 miles. Anyway, but we wanted to achieve an intersection of audacity and achievability. So as we create X Prizes, we think about these things. We think about what's an audacious goal, but yet it's achievable. In typically a 3 to 8 year time frame, the prize can be done in less than 3 years. It's too easy. It's not much of a stretch goal. If it's more than 8 years, people don't care anymore. So that's how when we construct our prizes, what we think about. The most important rule was you had to use the same ship and fly twice to space in 2 weeks. What that meant was that the cost of the second flight was the fuel and the touch labor in that period of time. So it was a way for us to actually cap the cost without getting too many accountants involved. Amazingly, it worked again. We had 26 teams from 7 countries that spent cumulatively $100 million. And the best thing about it was before we started this competition, we started thinking about how would we go about winning this thing. And we looked at every possible permutation. We looked at solids, hybrids, liquid engines, horizontal, vertical takeoff, carried by a balloon, by a helicopter, by an airplane, and every single approach was tried. And we didn't spend a penny paying anybody but the winner. And incredibly, on October 4th, 2004, the anniversary of Sputnik, Burt Rutan, backed by Paul Allen, who spent $26 million to win the $10 million purse, which is typical of prizes, won the competition. And the results for us were extraordinary. We changed the paradigm. I used to go to schools, and I would ask kids, how many of you would like to fly into space? All raise their hand. And I would say, there you go, the kids are raising their hands. And then I would say, how many of you actually believe you'll have a chance to go? And none would raise their hands. And they're right. Their chances of going were nil. But our paradigm is now that any one of you here, and I know Anthony will go, John, let's, or even if he doesn't. Any of you can go into space. Any of you can travel into space in the next few years. We inspired 26 teams. The one thing about a prize that's great, besides awarding a single winner, it actually carries an entire field of competitors along. So you're actually promoting an industry. If you put up a prize, you can promote multiple players playing in this. If you invest in a single team, you'll promote that team going. So prizes have tremendous benefits. We generate public excitement. We launched Spaceship Two backed by Virgin Galactic. We drove regulatory reform. My meeting with the head of the FAA 6 months before the X Prize went something like this. Marion Blakey, who's just retired, a wonderful woman. The X Prize is going to be won in Mexico or Canada because the rules don't exist here in the U.S. to allow a private spaceship to fly into space. That was it. A few months later, the rules existed, and they flew. And we had $2 million of money that came from St. Louis. We leveraged that to a $10 million purse. The $10 million purse was leveraged into $100 million of expenditures, and there's now been over $1.25 billion spent in this new industry. So we talk about the leverage that we got from the St. Louis community. Thank you. We had 5.5 billion media impressions worth $120 million. And I tell you, I went out and I met with the Fred Smiths and the Richard Bransons, the CEOs of all these companies, asking them to please fund the prize. And all of them said, well, why isn't NASA doing this? Can anybody really do it? And you're going to kill somebody. And everybody stopped. No one would put it forward. And one of the messages, and I'll mention here, that I'm so passionate about saying is that we have a big problem. We are killing ourselves in this nation by being so risk adverse. Without risk, there are no breakthroughs. You know, as Americans, we should be thankful that thousands of people gave their lives when they crossed the Atlantic 500 years ago and opened up the Americas. And then gave their lives again as they opened up the West. And I was in a congressional hearing, and the congressman said, Dr. Diamandis, how could you do this? You're going to cause people to kill themselves. I said that to her. I said, it's un-American for us not to take risks in things that we're passionate and believe in. Not for the third party involved public, but but to be able to allow yourselves to risk things that you care about. That's where breakthroughs come from. The day before something is a breakthrough, it's a crazy idea. If it's not a crazy idea, it's not a breakthrough, it's an incremental improvement. So how do we in our society allow for people to try crazy ideas? Governments, stop taking these risks. They have congressional investigations. Large corporations are worried about their stock prices. It's really the entrepreneurs, the individuals willing to risk everything, their lives, their reputations, their fortunes. That's where breakthroughs come from. And now, Spaceship One is hanging in there in Space Museum next to the Spirit of St. Louis that inspired it in the first place. I'm so proud of that moment. When the X Prize was won, this little Google doodle you see in the upper right with the Google logo and Spaceship One flying over it was on the page, and they connected to our website and almost took down our servers. But I got invited to go up and give a presentation similar to this at Google, and met Larry Page, the co-founder and president, who loved the idea of prizes and joined our board. We were broke at that time. We spent every penny we had on doing the original Ansari X Prize. By the way, the name X Prize, originally X was a variable to be replaced by the person who put up the money. It took me so long to find the money that the X stuck around. Honest story. And it was an Ansari family who, wonderful couple, born in Iran, came here in high school, became tremendous telecom entrepreneurs, sold their company Telecom Technologies for $1.25 billion, and her passion was to fly into space. And she flew in zero-G. She eventually one of my companies flew her to orbit to the International Space Station. But Larry came on, gave us some support. We grew our board, added folks like Craig Venter, who privately sequenced his genome, Elon Musk, Dean Kamen, Ray Kurzweil, some names you might know. We set out a mission to bring about radical breakthroughs for the benefit of humanity. Like Nana said, not just space. We started with space, moved to technology, and then we've said, let's look at using these in many areas. And so these are some of the areas that we've been focusing on, from space and energy and environment and nanotech and genomics and medicine, education, and even areas of poverty. I wanted to put this slide up here because it colors the way I think about things. And you should see this if you haven't seen it. This is Moore's Law. It's out of a book by Ray Kurzweil, Singularity is Near. And it looks at calculations per second per $1,000 laptop. How fast is the average $1,000 laptop today? Well, today it's about 10 to the 11th calculations per second. May not mean anything to you, but that's its speed. The brain, the human brain, is a pattern recognition machine. Does about 10 to the 16th cycles per second. What that means is in about the next 15 to 20 years, the average $1,000 laptop, which you probably have 2 or 3 at home, or your kids have, will be calculating at the same speeds and abilities of the human brain. Now, what's really interesting, though, is that 20 years later, the average $1,000 laptop will have the computational capability of the entire human race. Now, this is a game-changing moment because this drives everything else we do and how we do it. The entire human race, civilization as we know it, is going to be reinvented over the next 20 to 50 years. Whether it's artificial intelligence or, omniscience, omnipotence, omnipresence, these are the things that will characterize the average person and how we live. We're going to be reinventing society in a fundamental fashion. And, stop and think, really? But think about how quickly we've adopted email or cell phones or the internet, all those things. There's a revolution coming. People talk about, well, are you a prize like the Nobel Prize? Well, no, we are a different type of prize. We're an incentive prize. The Nobel and those kinds of prizes reward people for things they've done in the past. Sometimes 3 years, sometimes 30 years ago. What we do is we focus on rewarding people for something they will do. And we say, we don't care where you're from, where you've gone to school, what you've ever done before. You achieve this, you win. Our goal is to make heroes out of these people, to change the paradigm, to inspire, to define a problem and not a solution. to attract maverick thinkers, because